In today's weather forecast, we have new information about what's going to happen for the southeast with that big storm. What's the latest thinking about those rainfall totals for the southeast? And how strong could the winds actually get with this big storm system? Then all eyes are on deck on the west as several storm systems bring inches of rainfall, snowfall, and strong winds. Then lastly, the polar vortex will become very strong, which will bring some of the warmest temperatures this December. So in today's weather forecast breakdown, we'll explain all those details. Welcome back, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office, and let's get talking about the upcoming storm for the southeast. So here's a look at the 12Z Euro model for Thursday afternoon, December the 14th, 2023. And what you're looking at here is a product from the Euro, the 500 millibar height cyclonic relative vorticity. How much spin there is in the mid-levels of the atmosphere where we could find these weather disturbances from looking at the ground. We're looking up, and this basically tells us what's going to end up happening in the future based on that vorticity. So we're actually going to break down this into greater detail so you all could understand this a little bit better. So as you can see here on the Euro, we have a lot of vorticity energy focused over New Mexico. See this purple and see these red shadings? That's a lot of vorticity in the mid-levels. This is at 18,000 feet above the surface. So if you imagine going from the surface to 18,000 feet, we're looking up here. We're not looking at the surface. And this is important because it gives us, as meteorologists, a good idea and better understanding what the state of the atmosphere will be in at this given time. We also have a little bit of energy down here in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to be down here and this little system that are going to compete with each other, and we're going to have a phase up where two systems colossal into one, and we get a very dynamic system. So this is Thursday evening, and this is now Saturday morning. We can see where our disturbance is. It's down here, down across, again, the Gulf of Mexico with that disturbance in the Midwest and stretching into the deep south. But watch what happens by the time we go into Sunday morning. Let's forward this. See how this kind of all changes? These two systems really kind of get glued together. They kind of crash into each other. And therefore, what's going to end up happening is we're going to have a surface pressure response over the Florida area, as well as the southern Georgia, the southern portion of the Carolinas. And this is going to allow some baroclinic or barotropic deepening within the surface low air mass. And so when we go into Monday morning, just look how organized that gets. That's a short wave, by the way. So it's kind of attached here. We have a longer wave from Canada. And this environment here is really conducive for a very, very deep system moving up the eastern seaboard into the northeast, as you can see there. And it kind of gets absorbed within this larger scale trough that is well modeled on the Euro for Monday afternoon, December the 18th. So how will this be reflected at the surface where a lot of people live like me, right? So all of you are wondering, when is the rain going to get here? How strong will the winds get? And we're going to break down all those details right now so you all are prepared for some pretty intense rainfall. And wait until you see the rain totals from the national blend of models as well as from the Weather Prediction Center. It's looking pretty concerning. So let's kind of go through this and break this down in greater detail. So first of all, we have the trade winds that are very strong today, blowing in from the east, anywhere between 25 to 40 miles an hour. A lot of onshore winds here, a lot of coastal flooding impacts, wind advisories along the eastern coast of Florida. So keep that in mind if you're doing anything outdoors today. Maybe it's not raining, but it also is quite windy because of this surface high to the north. We talked about in yesterday's video how this surface high is very strong, 1,040 to 1,044 millibars in air pressure, and the gradient down here, or the pressure, is down to 1,016 to 1,020 millibars. So between these two air masses, that gradient is fairly tight and stiff, and that's going to allow these trade winds to be fairly strong throughout the day today. And again, the continuation of power outages down trees are a possibility through tomorrow. So this is for 3 in the morning for Floridian time. And we can see some showers trying to pop up. But notice down here, we got quite a bit of rainfall that is anticipated over Miami, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Delray Beach. Keep that in mind. That stalled out front, a lot of moisture, some forcing along that front. We're going to really squeeze out some moisture out of this. in the form of rainfall. So keep that in mind. Further north you go, looking good today, but further south, you're going to have a lot of moisture to contend with. Not a very good day to be outside at all if you're in Miami, Florida. And then let's go all the way into Saturday morning. This is by about, say, 5 in the morning. Not much changes there. And then it's really by the time we go into, say, about 3 in the afternoon when the rain really gets going. So if you're in Lake Okeechobee, if you're in Ocala, Florida, if you're in Orlando, Florida, if you're in, say, Tampa, Florida, if you're, say, Cape Coral, Florida, just be aware of that. There's going to be a lot of rainfall coming down. If you're in Delray Beach, Miami, still a soggy one. If you're just along the coast, the rain is going to get heavier. And also keep in mind, too, we got some showers and some thunderstorms potentially over Louisiana. So like Baton Rouge, Louisiana. If you're in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you're in Jackson, Mississippi, just keep that in mind. We have this cold front. Again, we have that baroclinic look here to the forecast. We have a surface low down here kind of attached to whatever front we have here, and that's going to allow that deepening to take place. Remember, that trough is pretty much stretched thin at the moment in this forecast. And then really, let's go all the way into 3 in the afternoon. This is for your Sunday. Okay, so keep that in mind. I want to make sure this is actually the correct one. Actually, no, hold on. This is actually 3 in the afternoon for your 3 in the morning. Sorry. Man, the time on this does not update very well. Sorry about that. But this is 3 in the morning on Sunday, and you can see lots of rainfall, very strong winds potentially. We could even see a few brief spin-ups with this. If there's enough instability, enough wind shear to contend with that instability, especially kind of south of that low-pressure system, we could see definitely some spin-ups, maybe some water spouts for sure. Air pressure, 998 millibars, so pretty deep surface low, okay? This really gets going pretty quickly once it interacts with that lift in the atmosphere, and this continues to move across Florida throughout the day Sunday morning. So by 9 in the morning on Sunday, you're continuing with quite a bit of rainfall. So a very soggy one Saturday night into Sunday, it seems like. So if you're doing anything outdoors, if you're going to the bar, if you're going to a restaurant Saturday night, just keep in mind, make sure you bring the umbrellas, you bring the coats with you because there's going to be a lot of rainfall. We're also, again, looking at some strong winds with this system, okay? It's going to be kind of a subtropical-like storm system with its frontal futures moving across the Florida state. And then going across Georgia and the Carolinas by the time we go into, say, Sunday night into early Monday, or yeah, this is Sunday night, that is 9 o'clock, all the way into early Monday morning by 3. By the way, look at that surface low. That is very deep. That's a 976, folks. So definitely some very, very strong winds coming offshore, maybe onshore. We could see some storm surge as well with this disturbance. I mean this out on the US GFS model, which is the American model, and we can see with where the system is going to be a little bit stronger than the GEF or the GFS thinks versus a Euro, which seems to be a little weaker, but still kind of the same thing. And the result here would be that the surface low, if it strengthens quicker, it could hit the Big Bend of Florida a little further north than, say, a system that would track right over the central Florida state, because of the system being sampled a little weaker. So similar to a hurricane here, if the system doesn't deepen as quick, it doesn't go as far north as quick as the GFS shows. But look at this rainfall over Georgia, over South Carolina. My goodness, it's going to be dumping pretty hard there. Rainfall rates over an inch an hour perhaps at times over the Georgia state. Not much going on here over Florida, which if this is right, we could see, again, tornadoes. We could see water spouts as well out of this system. So keep that in mind. We have a lot of wind shear that is throughout the deep layer, throughout the warm sector here as what the GFS thinks. And then, oops, what just happened there? Crazy enough. So if we go forward in time, we can see that surface low a lot weaker, 987 over the Carolinas, but still a mess across the eastern seaboard with rain, folks, strong winds, maybe some snowfall on the backside, but I think the timing of the cold air is going to be too late in such a way that there's not going to be really any snow at all now in the forecast, unless the Euro is a little more correct and it shows that there could be a couple of inches on the ground in the wake of this weather system. But nevertheless, a stormy weekend ahead if you're in the southeast, the eastern seaboard, and the northeast. Rainfall totals on the Weather Prediction Center are pretty alarming, okay? We got anywhere between 3 to almost 5 inches of rainfall over Georgia, over the Carolinas, maybe as much as 2 to 4 inches of rain across the Florida Keys, as well as southern Florida. Just keep that in mind. Quite a bit of moisture, and then quite a bit of rainfall too over the northeast. Could see anywhere between an inch to maybe a couple of inches there over New Jersey, over New York. If you're in New York City, if you're in Syracuse, if you're in Massachusetts, Maryland, I don't want to forget about you all there. Okay, some of you in the comments have said you skipped over us. I'm being more broad, folks. I cannot mention every single little city there, or otherwise this video would end up being 30 minutes, and who wants to watch a 30 to 50 minute video? I sure heck don't want to watch a 40 or 50 minute video, so I got to be a little broad here, but you get the idea. Maryland, Delaware, definitely quite a bit of rainfall there. Maybe an inch, maybe a couple of inches at least is what I'm thinking. Now, if you're specific looking at the Euro model, you can see here quite a bit over Georgia, southeastern Georgia, that is, over the Carolinas, maybe up to 5 to 6 inches of rainfall. But if we look at the USGFS model, it's a little further north with the maximum rainfall. So that would put central Georgia, southwestern Georgia with maybe as much as 5 to even 7 inches right here. 7 inches right there by Pensacola and Panama City, Florida. So again, there's some variables here, or some variable type modeling that we're seeing, but there's pretty good agreement now that somewhere rather east of Tennessee is going to get quite a bit of storminess. Now, because of the level of rainfall that we're anticipating, the Weather Prediction Center has issued a marginal risk for flooding and heavy rainfall for Amarillo, Texas, Lubbock, Texas for day 1, that's today, San Angelo, Abilene if you're in Wichita Falls, Elk City in Oklahoma. Just keep that in mind. There is a marginal risk for heavy rainfall and flooding today. Day 2, this goes all the way into Dallas, College Station, Austin, Killeen, Waco, Texas. If you're in Houston, Beaumont, Shreveport, Longview, under a marginal risk. That is for day 2. That is for tomorrow. And then the big day, okay, will be focused on Florida and Georgia, where there's now a slight risk for heavy rainfall and flooding over pretty much all of Florida, with a marginal risk all the way from New Orleans into Pensacola, Mobile. If you're in Columbus, Macon in Georgia, if you're in Savannah, Brunswick, just keep that in mind. A lot of rainfall, street flooding, urban flooding. There is going to be problems, and I want you all to be careful on the roadways. Do not be driving crazy. Slow down and make sure you leave plenty of braking distance, because again, your wheels don't have as good of traction when the ground is dry. And so drive slow, just kind of drive, just ease into it, okay? That's all I gotta say. And then for day 4, let's go into day 4. There's a slight risk for heavy rainfall for Asheville, for Charlotte, for Greensboro, for Fayetteville, for Raleigh, Greenville, Florence, Columbia in the Carolinas, Roanoke in Virginia, under slight risk. And this marginal risk goes all the way up into Harrisburg if you're in Philadelphia, if you're in New York, if you're in Bridgeport, Scranton, and even in, say, New Haven, Bridgeport, you're under a marginal risk. And down here, still that marginal risk for flooding and heavy rainfall over Macon, if you're in Savannah, Jacksonville, Fruit Grove. So we could be looking at a couple of days here, some very inclement stormy weather, but it's not just that. Day 5, there is also a marginal risk here for the extreme northeast. This covers, like I said, Hartford, Providence, if you're in Boston, if you're in Manchester, if you're in Brunswick in Maine, Portland, Maine, if you are in Lincoln, just keep that in mind, okay? Caribou under a marginal risk for flooding. I mean, all 5 days, there is some sort of flood threat for some portion of the United States. And that's because of this weather system. Okay, now, I hope I covered everything that I needed to cover, and hopefully you all give this video a huge thumbs up if you haven't already. But it's a good idea that we also talk about the West, okay? Because my viewers, I got someone leaving a comment somewhere in my area, Northern California. I want to thank you for that too. Because we have local viewers. We have Raptor that lives near Chico. We have Ronald that lives in Stockton. So we have locals that are curious about what our weather is going to do in California and the desert Southwest, because we're going to get a lot of storms, folks. The storm door is opening. It's going to be just blown right open, and we're going to get rain in here. So let's kind of get into it, right? So on the USGFS model, the American model, we have rainfall arriving right now, probably by Sunday afternoon, is what I think is going to happen. Now, there's some timing differentials here because of the cutoff nature of this low. So it might trend a little later, it might trend a little earlier, but we're thinking right now, Sunday afternoon, we're going to get a lot of wet weather around here. Maybe, and of course, the winds are going to get strong too because of the pressure gradient. So rainfall could be heavy at times Sunday night, and then we're in and out of showers on Monday. Not really a stormy Monday, I don't think, like we thought before, because the second low comes in and we're just going to keep the orographic effects. Probably Monday afternoon into the evening hours might be a little drier of the whole storminess that we have. And then the second one comes through, and this one looks pretty incredible. Lots of rainfall and maybe a thunderstorm or two with a continuation of strong winds. That's storm number 2 that rolls through, and then that moves out of the area, and then we're left really dry. Now, if we don't get any north winds in the wake of this system, which I don't think we're going to have some dense fog to be to worry about by the latter part of this week, or next week, we should say the 22nd and the 23rd, and that could really lead to some dense fog advisories before more wet weather comes in right around Christmas time. There's a lot of uncertainty on how the models are going to handle this for right now, but somewhere rather right around Christmas time and beyond looks very wet. Lots of rain, lots of wind, and more Sierra snowfall for the higher elevations. Now, how much rainfall could fall over California? And you all are wondering about this now. Again, this is from one model. Please do not trust things that are very far out in time. This is through the end of December, okay? Please understand that. This is not the official forecast. In fact, if we just kind of look at next week's rainfall total, that will probably be more honest than anything else. Anywhere between 1 to 3 inches for the valley, up to maybe 4 to 7 inches for the foothills and the mountains of the Sierra. The coastal ranges could get as much as 2 to 4 inches, maybe as much as 5 inches in some areas. Now, there is what we call the worst case scenario here. If I can bring that up really quickly, because some of you are probably wondering, what about the worst case scenario, David? So the 90th percentile, which is what we call it, is calling maybe for many areas here with 3 to 5 inches of rainfall, which probably is not going to end up happening. We are that's very unlikely to occur. But what you all need to know is it's wet next week with maybe additional storms thereafter. We really got to watch this because we could end up getting quite a bit for those mountains throughout the end of December. How much snowfall could fall right now? Probably between 3 to 5 feet of snowfall within the next 17 days for the time being. But again, like I said, the Euro or the GFS, it's scrambling, trying to be more consistent in the long run, but it's not. So therefore, we have to take this with a grain of salt. And for right now, for at least most of next week, looks pretty wet and rather cooler than what we have today. Now, I wanted to quickly talk about the temperatures. This is really, it's a big deal, but it's not like the storm across the southeastern portion of the United States and for the wet weather for the West. So this is kind of more on the lower end of the topic, so I'm really going to go through this very quickly. Not much detail to talk about other than that this is, I mean, Temperatures across Canada are ridiculously above average, anywhere between 20 to 30 degrees, and that's going to continue. There's no changes to the forecast. No Arctic air coming at all over the next 4 days across much of the U.S. As you see here, the Northeast. I mean, it's just going to remain really warm. Now, for the southeastern U.S., going to be cooler than average. That's because we have that storm. Lots of rainfall. So, well, that means, right, what? Less solar radiation hitting Earth, and that means cooler temperatures. So the rain, the clouds, the darker skies will help to limit daytime heating over the southeast. So that's why you have below average temperatures. But that's not an Arctic outbreak by any means. And going forward here over the next 10 days, I mean, look at Canada, really far above average. Much of the eastern U.S. definitely far above average. Now, slightly above normal for the south, for the desert southwest, but I mean, nothing like the east at all. And then maybe, hopefully, towards the end of the forecast here on the Euro, say days 13 to 15, you might get some cooler weather stretching up into the Northeast, as well as the desert Southwest and California, but still really warm up here across the northern tier of the U.S. Now, if you haven't checked out my Sacramento Weather Center office webpage, be sure to check that out. It's sacramentoweathercenter.com. Again, it is sacramentoweathercenter.com. There's a link in the description below this video where you can see my homepage, the About page, my blog page as well. You guys cannot miss this at all. I recently made a new discussion on there, so if you guys want to check that out, that would really mean a lot to me. No one has checked it out very much at all. And be sure to check out my links as well. I did add a few more. Okay, I added a few more yesterday, so be sure to check that out too. And then, of course, if you want to support the webpage for $5, you can if you wish. All right. Not only that, if you also want to check out my Twitter page, it is free to follow me. There's no cost whatsoever. By the way, follow me on my Sacramento Weather Center site too, if you wish, because you get awesome exclusive weather content that no one other than me gets. Other than maybe Ronald. He does really good at breaking down the Western weather very well, as well as Daniel Swain, a climatologist out of UCLA. But that's going to do it, folks. Thank you for watching, and if I can get up early tomorrow, cross my fingers that I can get up by like 5:30 in the morning, I will have a video out tomorrow.